Today is the day. Far Cry 6 reviews are finally out. Me, myself, I'm currently playing it, and so far, so good. But sadly, it is 2021, and just like everything in this world, everything must have a controversy. Far Cry 6 just dropped, and a lot of people are complaining, kind of under the radar, but they're making sure they want you to know that Far Cry 6 has some nasty content in it that they want to warn you about, and almost every reviewer that I've seen mentioned it. So what exactly is this controversy? Is it the connection to Cuba and some of the, let's say, not so great things that the Cuban government has done to its people over the years? Is it the connection to all the violence in the game and all the murder that you will commit throughout the experience in time? Is the controversy with its push of modern day slavery, with slave labor taking place throughout the entire game and experience? Is the controversy about using people who do not have families, such as orphans, and pushing them into military positions? Are these the controversies that everyone has to complain about? Because these are the things in the forefront of the Far Cry 6 story. So you would think that these serious human topics would be the pinnacle of controversy in a time period where everyone's hypersensitive about anything that talks about real world issues and serious topics. But no, my fellow gamers, none of these things are actually the controversies that people are complaining about. None of these actual interesting topics that actually relate to serious things going on in the world that actually, if people sat down and talked about and had a discussion about, maybe we could find a solution for. No, none of these things are the controversy. None of these things that this game speaks about is something that anyone cares to talk about. In fact, all the murder, the violence, the connection to modern day slavery, the link between using orphan children and pushing them into military positions, which often happens in third world countries, and it actually happens in first world countries too, just not to the greater extent. None of these things are the things that people are complaining about and saying they're oh so horrible that Ubisoft dared to put in the video game. Instead, the big controversy is what? You guessed it, it's cockfighting. Or if you don't understand, it's fighting between two chickens, roosters, hens, who knows, who cares. This is the controversy. I've been seeing and listening to a lot of reviews, and this seems to be an underlying thing people keep bringing up, that people may have a issue that cockfighting is in this game, and we're going to sit here and discuss why I find this to be silly as all get out. Number one, let's get the obvious out the way. This game is a game where you kill hundreds of thousands, or basically an infinite amount of virtual human lives. You could kill as many people as you want. And these gameplay reviewers, these game reviewers are sitting here not discussing about the genocide that you could commit in this game. Oh no, they're complaining about the cockfighting you could do in the game, the rooster on rooster violence, in which, let me fill you in, spoiler alert, the roosters don't even die. They don't die like real roosters might die in an actual real life cockfight. In fact, this game mode is kind of a spoof on fighting games. It's a silly interpretation of cockfighting. It's not even a serious version of it, which I'm actually glad they didn't do, because look, personally, I don't think violence is right at all, but it's a video game, so it's not real. I don't care what type of violence is in a video game, it's not real violence. So that's my personal stance. So it could have been real, but I prefer fake things. I think fake fictional things are more interesting than real things because I live in the real world. So I'm glad they made it fictional and not hyper realistic. But this is the complaint. The cockfighting. So it's quite interesting that people have no issues with the virtual people dying and the crazy ways in which you can kill them. We're talking machetes to the neck. We're talking about explosives to the body. We're talking about any bullet type you could ever think of, and even ones that don't really exist in the real world. You can spray these things on human lives like there's no tomorrow, but these review sites want you, the gamer, the reader of the review, to feel bad about the virtual
fighting minigame. That's basically Mortal Kombat with chickens, and I know it's technically legal in Cuba, but come on, guys.
Virtual chickens. First of all, you shouldn't feel bad about virtual anything because it's not real. But if you care about virtual chickens, which, keep in mind, as far as I'm understanding, This is an optional game mode. You do not have to interact with this thing. Maybe there's a tutorial where you have to do it one time. I'm not at that point in the game yet, but you don't have to mess with this in general based upon everything I'm reading. So you can completely ignore this. But again, they don't care about the people dying, but they care about the virtual chickens still not dying. They're just fighting. You know the things that chickens do anyway. They fight. If you ever seen some chickens, invade each other's territory, they might fight from time to time. I do understand in the real world, cockfighting, they purposely amp up the chickens to want to fight each other. I get that. But this is a, let me remind you, this is a video game. And also, I'm not just going to sit here and ramble on about how silly this is. I'm going to actually throw in something that might, poke at your brain a bit, maybe get the old noodle working. I want to point this out to you. A lot of people claim that they like the idea of other cultures being represented in video games. I find that interesting. I find that to be the biggest lie ever told. I find that to be the most stupidest thing that anyone's ever said. I know this language may seem harsh, but let me tell you why. I'm going to explain in great detail what I mean by this, because in my last video, which you should check out, where I discuss Far Cry 6 story might not be that great, you need to understand that these people saying that they like the idea of other cultures being represented in gaming are full of crap. How so? Let me tell you how. Using the cockfighting as an example, I'll explain. This game is clearly based upon, again, Cuba and Hispanic culture. It's also based upon, let's just be real, the more impoverished cultures in this society. Nothing wrong with that. Perfectly fine. Guess what these people do in the real world? So they represented it in the game. They sometimes bet on chickens fighting. I know, right? I think we all know this, or if you don't know, now you do know. So why am I bringing this up to you, this obvious point? It's because if people claim they like the idea of other cultures being represented in games, they sure are complaining that this portion of representation is being represented in this game. If you just like the idea of other cultures being represented in games, then why are you complaining about this? And there's other situations where cultures are represented and people don't say anything. Let me give you an example. Do people complain about the representation of gang culture in America and how they, in a lot of ways, they romanticize it in games and movies, but we're going to stick to games here. They don't complain about that. They don't complain about how they have these mafia games or these street gangs that's based on gang cultures like Saints Row and some of the Grand Theft Auto games. They don't sit here and complain and turn on their moral compass when those games are being created and saying, hey, we shouldn't put that in the game, or developers shouldn't make games about this content or this theme because that is bad and this is wrong. But see, with the virtual chickens that don't even die, with the virtual chickens that shoot energy balls out their body and they do fictional things, it's not a real cockfight, it's not even trying to be realistic, it's fake, that they have a problem with. But when they make a game about the mafia and not just make it about the mafia, even though they're representing that the mafia kill people, they like to tell it from the romanticized version of the mafia, where the mafia kind of sort of decent people, or at least some mafiosos were better than others. Or when they do it with street gangs, they do that in video games as well. See, that's fine. That's crazy to me. Again, I'm not saying that shouldn't be done or that shouldn't be made. I'm saying I don't understand how someone could complain about the cockfighting but not complain about that. That's all I'm saying. And not just that, we also had a game that came out not too long ago, Ghost of Tsushima, or Tsushima, however you want to pronounce it. In that game, you played as a samurai, and they tried to, again, use the romanticized version of samurais. People don't realize, or maybe they don't realize it because they didn't read up on it or study it, but samurais weren't these honorable, good people. They were thugs. Samurais were gangsters. Samurais basically either worked for a big gangster or they were the gangsters themselves. And the ninjas kind of came about to get away from the samurais because they were normal people who started assassinating them because they weren't good people. And even the ninjas eventually became bad people because that's how people operate. But when Ghost of Tsushima came out and everyone was talking about how realistic it was to the culture, you don't know nothing of that culture. You don't understand what you're saying. You claim you want other people's cultures to be represented in video games, but then when they give it to you, you complain. And then if they give it to you and it's not even the proper representation, you love it because it's been, what is the word, Americanized. So As long as they give you things you want the way you know it to be, then you're cool with it. Again, I can't believe I'm even having this serious discussion because again, this game isn't even about the seriousness of cockfighting. I love animals. I eat them from time to time, but I still love animals, and I don't think it's right for people to make animals fight. Animals will fight on their own. So you shouldn't have to do something to make them fight. So I'm not here saying that people should be doing that. But I understand that there's a culture of people who do that. And if I'm making a game or writing a book or telling a story about a group of people who do something, I'm not going to sit here and change it. I'm just going to tell it how it is. Now, we know with Far Cry 6, one more time, I just say it so everybody heard me, that this is a video game and this is a fake interpretation, a funny interpretation of cockfighting. And this is the controversy of this game. Forget how Ubisoft sat here and hyped up this game and made it seem like they were going to go all out with this story and plot. And based upon reviews, this is the same old Far Cry experience you always got. The villain is barely in the game, so you can't really utilize an actor. Like I said in my last video, go check it out. Link is going to pop up somewhere here. They don't complain about the false advertisement, which is a controversy for customers who bought this game being hyped up thinking they're getting a new Far Cry experience. No, they don't care about that, reviewers. They care about the virtual chickens not dying, shooting energy balls, but they paint the picture that this is also a bad thing. Sitting there saying, oh, come on, did they have to add the cockfighting? You know what you sound like? Oh my God, did they have to put a part of representation from another culture that I pretend I want to know more about, but really don't? Because as soon as they talk about something I don't like, I don't want to hear it. Anyway, my rant is over. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Based upon my last video, I got a lot of great feedback. A lot of people watching the video and it's still growing. I appreciate it. My channel's small, so any viewership is great for me. I just want to say I appreciate it, but I also noticed I got a lot of dislikes. So I'm trying to find a way to say what I want to say in a better way so you guys can understand me. But it might just be the case that no matter what I say, if I say something you don't want to hear, you're not going to like it anyway. Kind of like it doesn't matter how Ubisoft depicts cockfighting. You don't want to see it, so therefore it shouldn't be there. But if that